to Writing Second Grade, and I am so happy you are keeping here on this Monday. So today we are going to keep going with our first writing project of second grade. Do you remember what is the name of our writing project? It's two words, P and N. P and N. Do you remember the name of our first project? It's called a personal narrative. Can we say that with me? Personal narrative. So a personal narrative is what we are working towards in writing. And what does a personal narrative do? What kind of writing is it? It tells a story. A narrative piece of writing tells a story. And in this case, it's personal. So we are going to tell our own story, one about ourselves. So let's take a look at our next step in the writing process. Our learning goal is I can create a storyboard to plan my personal narrative. So we are still in the planning and brainstorming phase of writing. I believe it's one of the most important phases of writing, so you can really have a strong foundation before you even put your pencil on the paper. And today, what we're going to use to help us plan is called a storyboard. A storyboard is a drawing of the story that we are going to write about. So today, we get to use our art skills to prepare us to write. A storyboard is a group of pictures that tells the story of our writing. Storyboards are used in plays, in movies, in TV shows, in comic books, even in video games. So many different kinds of writing use storyboards to plan out their shows or movies. For example, this is an example of a storyboard. You can see there's images of this boy. He's going to a store, and this shows the story that someone is eventually going to write about through images. When people create a storyboard, it's so they can make sure that the story makes sense and it has all the parts. Here's another example of a storyboard. This is for a comic book. You can see all the different images in order tell the entire story of this comic book. So we're going to be working to create a storyboard just like this that's going to show our personal narrative story and what we can use to eventually write it out into nice, beautiful sentences. So we're going to create our storyboard about our micro moment. Do you remember this term? A micro moment. A small one-time event. We are doing our personal narratives on a micro moment. Something that happened to us once over a short amount of time. We came up with some awesome micro moments last week when I asked you to brainstorm. People talked about the first time they learned to float, the first time they rode a bike, when they opened their birthday presents. All of those are great micro moments because they're small. Some of us came up with awesome moments, but they were way too big. For example, my family's trip to Las Vegas or our trip to Knott's Berry Farms. Those are too big of moments. They're awesome, but you need to make them smaller. So for Las Vegas, what is one thing that you did in Vegas that you loved? That's your micro moment. Or for Knott's Berry Farm, what is one ride that you went on? Just one ride. That's your micro moment. We can have these awesome trips that we went on, but you need to pick one thing that happened on those trips. Only one thing. That's your micro moment. The one that I am going to write about is taking my driver's test. What you need to know that I am not a big fan of driving, so taking my driving test was a huge deal for me. And this test only happened over 20 minutes. I only took this test for 20 minutes. That's a micro moment. But I'm going to write about this story with description and detail. And and turn this 20 minutes into my entire personal narrative. So that's why we're picking our micro moment, so we can expand on it when we write. And within our micro moment, no matter what we pick, there is always a beginning, middle, and an end in that story. We worked on this chart last week when we were reading Jabari Jumps. When we're creating our storyboard about our micro moment, it's going to include a beginning, middle, and an end, because every good story has all three of these parts. The beginning is where we start, and it introduces the event, characters, and setting. It gives all the information you need to understand the rest of the story. In the middle, as we keep telling it, it tells the action in order. Remember, in a narrative, we have to talk about what happened first, second, third, fourth. Everything we write needs to be in order. And then as we end our story, we're going to tell how the story ended. Was it a happy or was it a sad ending? But in our personal narratives, we will have all three elements, so we will use all three in our storyboard. And Super Scholars, this is what our storyboard is going to look like. We're only going to have 4 boxes. 1 will be for the beginning, 2 will be for the middle, and 1 will be for the end. This storyboard will help us when it's time to write our personal narrative. And today, during this lesson, you are not going to be writing or drawing anything. This is just the time for me to show you how we're going to do this. At the end, then you can take your time to make an awesome storyboard. But right now, all you're doing is watching me create my storyboard for taking my driver's test. Okay, so we're first going to start with the beginning. Okay, here is my first part of my storyboard for the beginning. I did a quick sketch. Yours don't have to look like this. They can have color, but this is what my storyboard will be. So, in the beginning of my story, I'm talking about the characters, the event, and the setting. I have all 3 parts in my beginning. So the characters were me and the instructor that was doing my driver's test. And then the event is, this is my little drawing of a car. It was a tiny little car, and I'm taking my driver's test, so I have a car. And then it took place in West Seattle. That is the neighborhood I grew up in. I couldn't really draw the entire place, so I just decided to write the name West Seattle. But in the beginning of the story, we had 2 characters and a car. That is how we started. We were just in the parking lot waiting to begin. So in the beginning of my storyboard, I included all the parts in the beginning of a story. Okay, up next, we're going to talk about the first event. So here's the first part of the middle of my story. I'm telling the action in order. So we left the parking lot, which say was over here, and now these are the roads. So this is the little car. Imagine that me and the instructor were in the car. And I'm doing a left turn here. So I have to go into the intersection and a left turn. Those were pretty scary for me, but I did it and I did it well. So that was the awesome first part of my driving test. We were out and in the car and I made a good left turn. So I first introduced everything in my story, and now we're beginning to talk about the events in order. Okay, what is next up for the middle? But before we keep going, I need you to be ready for our this and that for writing. So go ahead, stand up out of your chair, push it to the side, and get ready to think about. Would you rather choose a Snickers bar or a bag of Skittles? What would you rather find in your Halloween bag? A Snickers bar or a bag of Skittles? Snickers, you're going to do jumping jacks. Skittles, you're gonna hop. Okay, take your pick. What do you decide? I'm going with a Snickers bar, so I'm gonna do jumping jacks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is it. And we can sit back down and be ready to keep it up with writing. Okay, here is a second event that happened in my story. So let me explain. So this is the car. As you can see, we've got my curly hair in the driver's seat. And I am thinking, oh no. So we started off well with this left turn. And then I was practicing parking. That's part of the test. But after I was parking, I started to drive again. And y'all probably don't know what this is, but I forgot to let go of the parking brake, which if you don't know, that's bad. Don't do that. So then I was thinking, oh no, and I started to get really nervous because I didn't want to fail. So after my turn, we came to practice parking, but I made a mistake and I got really nervous. So that's why I have the oh no, and I have a little like surprised face, because this was the next event that happened in the story. But now, what about the ending? How did my driver's test end? Okay, for the ending, I drew the little scorecard that they gave back to me when I was done with my test. I got 85 out of 100. You needed an 80 to pass, so I passed my driver's test, and it was a happy ending. So I'm also going to include a smiling face to show on my storyboard that I passed the test and it was a happy ending. So overall, I showed on my board my beginning, the middle events of my story, and then the ending, how my story came to an end. I'm going to use all of these drawings on my storyboard to help me eventually write my story of taking my driver's test. And this is what you are going to do on your own. You are going to take any piece of paper, put it into 4 boxes, and create your own storyboard for the micro moment that you chose. You'll have beginning, 2 middles, and 1 end. You can draw as detailed pictures as you like, or make more like little sketches like I did. Either way it works, as long as you're drawing out and showing the story of your personal narrative. Okay, Super Scholars, I am so excited to see your storyboard. Once you have completed your storyboard, I want you to take a video where you're just talking me through what you drew. So basically, I want you to tell me the story. Use your storyboard and explain to me your micro moment. What happened in the beginning, middle, and end. I can't wait for you to share all your awesome micro moments with me. So first, make that storyboard and then take that video. Let's get drawing.